big thank you to Matt Slater, who is joining me now on Shrimperscast. Matt, welcome to Shrimperscast.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
I'm all good, thanks. And how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good, good. For our listeners who aren't familiar with yourself and your work, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I work for the Athletic. I used to work for the BBC and the Press Association before that. I cover the business of sport for the Athletic, and I've only really done sort of newsy stuff.
Yeah.
In my career, I've not always done football, but it's pretty much only football these days. When it's the politics of football, it's the money, it's rows, it's clubs in crisis, it's takeovers, that sort of thing. And I've kind of been doing that for about 15 years, I guess. That sort of stuff. I've been a journo for about 25. So yeah,
So
that's what I do. It's kind of niche. I don't do transfers. I don't do match reports, and so I do money and rows and problems.
So you've got a lot of experience, really. There's been a fair few high-profile stories over those 25 years for you to cover. And you're a Southend fan, is that right?
Yeah. What an amazing case study, for my work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a Southend fan. Yeah,
Brilliant. So that's kind of why we reached out, knowing that you've got the sort of expertise. Since the announcement of the Consortium's agreement to take over the club, at that point there was a huge amount of excitement amongst the fan base. Kind of felt like finally Ron Martin might be going and some new blood might be coming in with some fresh ideas and some money. Since then, I think certainly amongst certain fans, there's a bit of nervousness. There's been a delay announced. Initially, we were looking at the 1st of November. That was pushed back. There's now a extraordinary general meeting on the 17th. There's a meeting at the council this Thursday. There seems to be a lot of moving parts and a lot of complexities to this deal. With your experience and your knowledge of takeovers and things, what are your general thoughts on the structure of this takeover at Southend?
Well, I mean, there's a lot in there. So look, every takeover is a little bit different. Every club's a little bit different. There aren't, and people don't sell clubs unless there's problems, usually. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but honestly, they are the exceptions. So most clubs are kind of sold in a state of distress, or because the owner's circumstances have changed. So there's never, they're not great. They're not smooth. They're not easy. And nearly all football clubs are loss making. So you're talking about the sale of a kind of distressed asset that's leaking money. So that's a very sort of general point. So they don't go smoothly, right? This is not like buying a house, perfect chain. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's quite ordinary for things to change, things to drag on a bit, something to come up in due diligence, someone to sort of change their mind. So that stuff is fairly standard. But then there are some very specific things about Southend, right? So if we, in no particular order, Southend has been a very complicated property play for, and this is where some of your older listeners will go, oh, no, I remember in the 80s and 90s. Let's just say, for argument's sake, 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
And building stuff adds complexity, particularly, I would argue, in Southeast England, particularly if you're talking about housing. And of course, the plan has changed, and his previous ideas, he couldn't get them off the ground. He couldn't do them quick enough. He's not a brilliant property developer, I'm afraid to say. That's been one of the sort of tragedies of being connected to him. But anyway, he finally landed on a reasonable idea, an idea that is good for the area, that had the buy-in of the council, which is crucial. But it's still quite tricky to do, building that many houses on 2 sites initially. So there's that. He's also been propping the club up. I wouldn't say in a kind of completely unusual way, because I can think of some other examples of clubs where the owner and his club have become so strangely entwined. It is on the unusual end of the spectrum, though, just how opaque and weird his corporate structure is. Mm-hmm. So you've got to untangle all that. You've got to untangle sort of 20, 25 years worth of failed property adventures with the complexity of the one he's landed on, building loads of houses, loss-making club, crashing through a couple of divisions quickly. And it's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. I think also the other thing about Ron Martin, and this again is quite common, he's getting to the ends of his time as a businessman, put it that way. Yeah. And then you have the next generation and what they want to do. I see this all the time. Do the children, do the grandchildren sometimes, are they as emotionally committed to the football club as the father, the grandfather? So that can be an issue, and how you sort of negotiate that sort of generational, what are we doing here? This is now a family business, a family concern. So I think if you throw all that in the mix, and then we are talking about a club that from the minute you take over, you are paying bills. They are loss-making. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be loss-making for a couple of years, at best. So you have some management to do on your side as well. Most people now, this is becoming quite common, build a group, build a syndicate. Mm-hmm. Unless you've got a sovereign wealth fund or you're backed by a private equity fund, but then you'll have the same issues with the private equity fund as well, because they'll have an investment committee and shareholders, etc., and investors. But unless you've got a sovereign wealth fund, or you are just lucky and an absolute billionaire wants you, mm-hmm. you're dealing with stuff at your end as well. So you've got all the complexity on the other side, 20, 25 years worth of corporate nonsense to unpick. This relationship with this the council is absolutely crucial. There's debt there's bills, there's ongoing bills. There's a hell of a lot to do. So that's a long rambling answer without really getting into any specifics as to why it got pushed back a couple of weeks. Yeah. But the general picture is confusion. It's going to take time. And I've been getting messages from Southend fans for about, for a long time, but let's say a load this year. And my sort of standard response has nearly always been I totally get it. Just calm down. All right. Just breathe. There've been times when I've been like, no, I actually now am a little bit worried, because
you're joining them in the panic as well.
No, because the deal had collapsed, or I was very concerned about how erratic Ron was and how unreasonable and how irrational he was at times, and just his expectations of what he thought the thing was worth. But from the moment I think he kind of got boxed in and realized that Fossett's Farm was a fantasy as a stadium, and was just suddenly just got realistic about what he was actually selling. Loss-making National League club with a dilapidated stadium. I'm not good enough at this to pull off 2 building sites. The minute that kind of simplified, no, I'm going to sell this football club for what it's kind of worth, £1. Yeah. We'll have a conversation around what I get back from what I've put in. There'll be a negotiation to be had there. And maybe we can have a conversation as well about some upside. If X, Y, and Z happens in a reasonable amount of time, maybe I get a little bit back, maybe. So suddenly it just got, what he was selling got simpler.
Right.
And at that point I sort of calmed down a bit, because I was like, okay, what he's asking for Southend United makes sense when you benchmark it against other clubs. What he was asking before was ludicrous and was only made sense if Fossett's Farm was actually built and you could touch it, or it was nearly built. Yeah. So if you compare it, let's say, to Everton, or someone else that is selling a distressed football asset that has some incredible infrastructure. Reading's a really good example. But even Reading's really hard to value at the moment because they're very probably going to be a League Two club. They may well have top end of Championship stadium and training ground, but they are going to be a League Two club next year, and they're going to be banned from buying players for 3 windows. So you have a really complicated valuation exercise there. But at least you can go visit the training ground and go, wow, this is kind of Premier League standard. Yeah. At least you can go see a game. You can sit at the stadium and go, wow, that's pretty good.
This stadium exists. Yeah. It's a tangible asset. Yeah.
Ron was selling a picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I was getting concerned in the summer because all I was hearing was, he wants this, he wants this. So I was like, what's he selling? What does he think he's selling?
Yeah.
And he's also selling as part of the problem then, he was also selling his own track record. If he was a guy who could build things and go, well, look, yeah, like, I know you're kind of taking a punt on me, but look what I've built. Look what I can do. All right. Yeah, the football club's not gone so well in the last few years. It happens, COVID, blah, blah, blah. But look, at least I can get stuff done, right? No, he couldn't even see, he didn't have that on the table. So once everything got simpler, I calmed down a bit and I'm less, and I'm pretty relaxed actually about what I'm hearing at the moment.
Okay. So in terms of the consortium, the makeup of the consortium, so the consortium model, as you've said, is not that unusual.
No, not at all. Not at all.
What teams similar to Southend, people looking to buy them, that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual people involved, the makeup of the consortium, obviously we know Justin's heading it up, and then there's a number of Southend business people involved, which on the face of it seems very positive. Do you have any thoughts on the consortium itself, the makeup of the people involved? And we're hearing as well this week that they're still considering kind of adding to it. There's a George Taylor, Teddy Taylor's son's name's been floated again, which might set the people's nerves on edge a little bit with it being so late in the day that they're still considering adding to it. But from what you've said, go with it. Relax.
Don't panic.
And don't panic. Yeah. So in terms of the consortium itself, what are your thoughts?
So I'll start general and we'll go specific like last time. Like the syndicate approach is becoming pretty normal. So, this year, Charlton were basically bought by a sort of local / American syndicate with kind of guys on the ground having some skin in the game. Not so much, but the real money coming from the States, and it's actually not even being one guy, being like 3 or 4 billionaires, two that we sort of are quite happy to be public, and some others who are very much sitting in the background. Yeah. Fenway Sports Group is another really good example of this approach. And to sort of say late in the day, people come in and out of that group.
Yeah.
All right. So that again is something quite common. Birmingham City, another recent example where there are, there's sort of a main person who's driving it, what they call a managing partner. Then there are limited partners who sort of sit in the background. And I don't think we're quite there yet with Southend, but it was part of a previous idea where sometimes you throw some shares to some celebrities, some famous people, to create a bit of sizzle, right? A bit of, razzmatazz. They might bring something to the table in terms of their social media following. So, Burnley, there's an example there. We saw it at Leeds United, the Leeds United group, right? It's a fascinating example. The 49ers, it's sort of the investment arm of the NFL team, are kind of driving the process, but there are half a dozen other guys who have got big money people who've got just as much money in as the NFL people. And then they've also then distributed, they've sort of created this sort of team of golfers, basketball players, who've bought in. Well, they haven't really bought in. I think some of them have actually just been given shares. And it's created a conversation. And it's very much around sort of driving Leeds United's brand, particularly in the US. And I think it will probably be quite a good idea. Southend, we're not quite there yet, but who knows, right? So this is not uncommon, right, to have a load of people. And I quite like the idea of it being local people. Because let's be honest, where are we on this journey? We're not Leeds United, we're not Liverpool. So it should be people that genuinely understand the club, understand the community, the region, and are accountable, right? They are accountable. So many problems that come with football ownership are absentee landlords, people who aren't accountable. So the Glazers being perhaps an extreme example, but crucially don't get it. They don't properly get it. They don't understand the connection between club and community. They don't really understand, like just really obvious stuff like, how much can we charge these people? I don't really know. I haven't got a feel for it. What do they want? Do they want a beer in the ground, or are they quite happy with the pubs outside? What sort of food and bev do they want? Do they buy programs? I don't know. What should we put in the club shop? So many simple things are solved by local people. They really are. Yeah. So I quite like that bit of it. I think the group, I suppose the most interesting thing about the group is Justin, right? His whole story, why Southend? Why now? Frankly, are you rich enough? Which I think sounds like a rude and not very British question, but he's chosen to buy a football club. He's chosen to buy a cherished community asset. So that question is reasonable, particularly what the fans of that club have been through. So, I don't think we've got a hard and fast answer there. That's fine. And I think there's enough there for us to at least give him a chance. And I'm, certainly not going to be pestering him for his bank account details, but I think it is a reasonable question. And he will have to answer those questions, and he has presumably answered those questions to Ron Martin's people, to the rest of his consortium partners, to the Football Association, and if we go up, certainly to the EFL. So that's fine. Other people in the group, I mean, there's a couple names that gave me quite a bit of comfort. So I don't have the details in front of me. Is it Justin Brown, Jason Brown?
Jason Brown's the hedge fund guy. Yeah, Jason Brown runs a hedge fund. I think he owns it
in Hong Kong. Yeah. In Hong Kong, yeah. So he's the wealthiest guy. I think there's another guy, Tom Arnold, who looks like he's got sort of a good job, good decent CV. He's a London-based finance guy, but Brown runs quite an exciting hedge fund that is based on Chinese property. So that's an interesting area.
There's a bit of a story brewing there, isn't there?
Well, he's made a big punt on Chinese property bouncing back. Right. So if he wins that bet, he's going to be absolutely loaded. If he loses that, he's not. But but look, he runs a big hedge fund, so that's fine. Now the guy that's had the most, he's had a little bit of attention in the last week is a name that I've been aware of for a while. Teddy Taylor's son George, and I don't know how much people will know about the Athletics. So the other guys in the consortium aren't really an athletic story.
Yeah.
George Taylor is an athletic story because he is the main shareholder at Rangers. And I can give you a little mini exclusive if you like, or a scoop. So George frankly has denied this up until now.
Sorry, he's denied that he's involved in the consortium.
Yeah. Up until so I think this week. And I think there are a few reasons for that. One, the situation, Rangers is a very complicated and political club, and the ownership group there has been through some flux. He became the most prominent person there about a year ago. Two, Scottish football has quite strict rules on multi-club ownership. So I'm probably getting a bit too technical here, but Scotland has not done, if you like, what Belgium, the Netherlands, France have done, where they've been quite open about investors having stakes in more than one club in more than one place.
Sure.
Scotland's got quite a strict rule on that. Now they're about to relax that rule. And actually there's even some doubt whether it was ever really a rule or just a guideline. So there's some doubts around that. So he had some Scottish FA issues to sort out. Now, well done, Chris Phillips for getting the name out. And I think that has forced George Taylor to sort of admit, yes, all right, look, I am involved, I am interested. I've known he's been interested for a few months, and one of the initial sort of ways I was fobbed off is, no, it's not me. I've helped put Justin in contact with Jason. because George is based in Hong Kong as well. Hong Kong or Singapore, I can't remember. That's where he's made his money. He's a very successful finance guy in the Far East. And that kind of made some sense, although I sort of knew that it wasn't quite true, that he was actually involved. Now, the bit that we don't know, and this, it might not even really matter, is to the extent that he's involved. It could be a very, very small contribution. I think there might be still some sort of things to sort out with Rangers and Scottish FA, but that's it. So, you know, a few weeks ago, let's say a month or so ago, he denied it.
Yeah.
He's now admitting Chris's story.
Yeah.
So that's fine. All right. I don't think we need to panic about this. I really don't. It's good. I would say this is
like
good.
Another money man, potentially.
Another money man.
Yeah. And he's got ties as well. Ties to the area. Yeah.
I think he went to school there. Yeah. We know all about his father and his father's love for the club and the city. So great. And I would say the third thing, he runs a massive football club.
Yeah.
That sounds like a win to me.
Yeah. So as long as he can get over the issues with the
and he doesn't need to run Southend.
No.
I think that's the thing that's probably what he's most concerned about. He's probably most concerned about people like me or the Scottish media. Anything that happens at Rangers is back page of the Post and the Record and all those, you know, Scottish Sun, etc., etc. Him giving a clue that he's not 100% focused on Rangers, a hint,
right,
would be a story up there.
Sure.
So that's, I think, what he's sensitive about.
Brilliant. Okay.
We shouldn't be sensitive about it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You sort of touched on this in your previous answer, but I mean, straight up, do you think the consortium, what you know about the consortium, do they have the financial muscle to pull this off as a long-term thing, or is there a risk that this is a short-term punt to flip and make I think it'd be difficult to make a profit quickly.
Yeah. No, look, it's a perfectly reasonable concern if any Southend fan is worried about that, because, you know, there are umpteen examples of it. I don't believe that's what's going on here. I really don't. I think Justin's an interesting guy. I think his you know, his story, the reasons he's given for doing this are sincere, you know, and fair play to him. You know, there are similar stories of people who just, you know, love the game and want to have a go at it and have, you know, and they've got a bit of time and a bit of money. They've made some success in one part of their life and they're looking for an adventure, and away we go. I think the fact that he has surrounded himself with enough people who, like I say, who have skin in the game emotionally, geographically, is good, right? They all keep this grounded. They all keep this real. Do they have, as a group, enough money to run a National League football team? Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Because
let's be honest, Southend United, it is hard to be sustainable at that level, particularly if you have sort of quite big, you know, an EFL style operation. But we should not be losing potloads of cash at the moment. The funding gap should be manageable. And I think it becomes more manageable, even more manageable, when Ron really goes, the city genuinely sort of feels like there's something worth getting behind again. The support has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bit more to come, a sort of post-Ron going that will help. And maybe people then will buy a shirt and a program and a raffle ticket and a pie. And I think, you know, and maybe sponsors come back as well, because let's be honest, Ron has treated sponsors really, really poorly. Maybe people, you know, local companies will start sort of doing more stuff at the club. There's a match day and a commercial boost that I think comes post Ron going without really trying that hard.
Yeah, and then they've sort of said that they're looking to redevelop Roots Hall, which you would expect will have a commercial aspect to it as well.
100%. So that's what I think gets interesting. So the running of Southend United for the rest of this season, tomorrow, next season, whatever, I think kind of, I don't say it looks after itself, but it is not that hard, and they've definitely got the money for that. And if they haven't, then oh my god, then what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
And I, you know, and I thought that's a relatively easy piece of budgeting. Where things get interesting is the stadium, right? So it's an absolute must, the Rootsall is redeveloped, because one, it's leaking money. It's actually a cost at the moment, but it's a borderline disgrace. But it's a cost if you're just looking at it from a business point of view. So you've got to sort that, and then it's a case, well, how much do you want to sort it? Should we just sort of fix it, or should we genuinely do something with this space, which is a potentially really exciting space? It's by a station. It's a growing, area. What is it? 300,000 people in the city these days. Got, if you did a half an hour, 45-minute hour thing. I mean, okay, a lot of it's in the sea, but your catchment area is pretty good.
Yeah.
You'd be thinking, well, let's look around. Let's have a look at Chesterfield. Let's have a look at the good grounds in League Two. Where do we want to be? We want to be, striving for promotion to the Championship. That's where we should be aiming for. Top half of League One, i.e., I would argue where Ron found us. Right. So let's get, that's where we belong. If you look at our history, that's where we belong. So what do we need? 15 to 20,000. Yeah. All right. Or certainly something scalable. Okay, so that we can get to 20 and if need be. But every ground, I'm afraid, these days, I know people don't like hearing about this stuff. You need to think about the Prawn Sandwich Brigade, because most people, there is a sort of natural limit as to how much you want to pay for a ticket, but people don't mind clobbering the corporate lot.
Yeah.
Sponsors want those seats anyway. So you want to do something there. You want at least one good side that has really good hospitality, provision.
And that's looking like the East, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I think so. Just if you just think about, if you think about the space, so then you want decent parking, you want a decent shop, and every single owner I think I've spoken to for the last 15 years recognizes this as a problem. Football clubs lose money because their most important asset, apart from their players, the building, is used 25 times a year. So you've got to sort that, maybe 30 if you're playing in non-league or whatever. You've got to sort that. It's got to become a sort of 24, not 24/7, but it's got to be something that you use every day.
It's got to be generating revenue on the days off.
Absolutely. If you look at all the good grounds that have been built recently, they're all built with that in mind. Like, you put a cafe in there, you put a museum. I'm talking about sort of higher up, but there's certainly things you can do. I was at Derby a couple of weeks ago. They've got a bar at one end, they've got a Greg's at the other.
I'm a Derby fan. I know it.
Oh, right. Well, there you go then. So I mean, and there are so many grounds that have the, Blackpool has a medical, has a doctor's surgery in it.
Yeah.
Bolton has a hotel sort of attached to it. Reading has a hotel attached to it. You've got to think about footfall. Spurs, they're all talking about the walk, the walkway you do on the roof, and it's all, they're going to put a go-kart underneath, aren't they? A karting rate. It's literally the same thing. Liverpool, they're creating this sort of outdoor space, and they're bringing the museum in, and everyone is trying to drive footfall. Everyone is trying to bring you in, keep you in, all right, for longer. So that is where this group, and they might have to add people later. That is where I think things get interesting. And then that's again, it goes back to the complexity with Rom. Is Rom really going to contribute 20 million to this project?
Right. So this is another burning question from the supporters out there. We're part of a sort of supporters chat group, and we put it out there. And one of the questions that people want to know really is, we all know his history. We all know the things he's reneged on in the past. Is this? I think there's a section 106 or something. Is that a secure enough mechanism to guarantee that he's going to pay this?
Well,
we're hearing that he's got to pay 6 up front and 14 later on. Or what are your thoughts on that? Because it just seems, knowing the guy's history, that might be.
So this goes back to the first answer, doesn't it? Why? Why has this been so hard? And it's the property element of it that's made Southend peculiar. Again, not unique. I did a story on Yeovil, which is all completely the same Yeovil. It was all about the land around Yeovil and who really owned it and what could they put there and what did the council want. Obviously, the guys that own Yeovil wanted to put houses there because houses are really, really, ka-ching. but the town plan didn't actually want. They wanted light industrial. Honestly, I could tell you about 10 other clubs like Scunthorpe, again, property. So, is it enforceable? I think is the concern. Well, it is. It is if you absolutely do the work properly now. And this is where we kind of need the council. And I'm really pleased that the MPs and the councillors have actually really, I think, understood the complexity and the seriousness of Southend United's dilemma. So I'm really pleased that they've raised their game. But they have to finish it. They absolutely have to sort of say, Ron, your planning permission for Fossett's Farm, which was granted God knows however long ago now, was contingent on you doing something for us. Affordable housing at Roots Hall. Okay. And because we love the football club and it's important to the town, blah, 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 we weren't going to let you knock down Roots Hall until they had a home elsewhere. Right. And then your enabling development, et cetera, all worked, right? How unfortunately, money, COVID, credit crunch, Ron not being very good, terrible credit history, he just couldn't pull that deal off. So the deal changes. But the planning permission, the essence of it is still the same. All right, Ron, you can build these homes in what was a sort of greenfield site. It still is a kind of greenfield site, but the town's grown, blah, blah, blah. We definitely need them. We all agree that we need them. And if it's not you, maybe we'll let someone else could have a go. But you own that land at the moment, so we have to deal with you. All right, fine. So you're not going to do what you promised to do at Roots Hall anymore, and you're not going to put that stadium there. Okay, well, look, we can make this work. You put affordable housing that we want as part of your new development, and to recompense the club to sort of fill the gap there, you've got to put the money back into the stadium. So you're not building them a new stadium on your new site. You're going to help them redevelop their old stadium, right? Where we were hoping to put whatever it was, 400 or 500 affordable housing. So it is a sort of making do. It does work. The balance is still there. What the people of Southend want, and their elected representatives, housing, works for the sort of town plan, the city plan. This private developer, he gets what he wants. Great. And the football club, which has been caught up in this horrible mess for 20, 25 years, is made right. Yeah. And we can all move forward. You just got to nail it all down. Yeah. You've just got to absolutely nail it all down. Ron, we're just going to tweak your planning permission, but absolutely your new enabling development so that you can carry on, so you can build your, whatever it is now, 1,500 homes.
Yeah, yeah.
Is you help redevelop Roots Hall.
Yeah,
it can all be done.
Yeah, okay, good. I think that's, again, it comes back down to the history and the sort of feeling that the fans have been burned many times before.
And let's be honest, you're probably going to be dealing with Ron's children at this point, because this is going to take a while.
Another question the fans have is around the debt equity swap, I believe the term is. So there's obviously been this delay. Originally, we were looking at the 1st of November. We've now got this extraordinary general meeting on the 17th, whereby some of the shares are going to be converted into debt, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think there's a concern here again, and this does come back again down to the sort of history of Ron and the club, that maybe this is a moving of the goalposts or something untoward is happening. And I think there's a feeling that perhaps when they've been asked, members of the consortium have said, oh, this is Ron that needs this doing. And when Ron's been asked, he said, oh, no, it's the consortium that need this. So there's kind of mixed messages coming through. Yeah. With your experience and your knowledge of this type of stuff, what are your thoughts on this delay and this mechanism really to dilute the shares?
Yeah, it's only because it's Ron that we're worried.
Right.
This is like, honestly, this is really standard.
Right.
Loads of clubs are funded by these soft director loans. And then what tends to happen is, particularly on the way out, they just convert them to equity. So, if you're under financial fair play rules, you're limited as to how much equity you can put in. So that's often why the soft loans go in. But then if there's a change of control, you always want this stuff tidied up. God, loads of clubs do this. I sort of follow pretty much every EFL club at Company's House and I get alerts.
Right.
twice a week.
Yeah.
That recently. So this is one of the issues at Everton, right? So Mashiri's been pumping in soft loans there for ages. It's one of the issues actually in their argument with the Premier League, how those loans should have been treated. Should they have borne interest? Was there a tax implication? Blah blah blah. It can get complicated. It can. I just think with Ron, as I said, this weird tangled web and loads and loads of cross guarantees, the amount of money he's borrowed, lots of intra-company debt that only he probably really understands, or his accountants really understand. It just needs to be tidied up on the way out. And if I was buying this thing, I would absolutely want all of this sorted out. So I think they're both right when they say he's asking for it, I'm asking for it. Ron wants every penny that he can get out of this. And he doesn't want sort of like liabilities hanging over him either. And I'm sure his children don't, because they've got to sort of carry on and build this stuff. And equally, anyone walking into this, well, hold on, I just want to absolutely make sure that by buying Southend United and there are other sort of subsidiaries they're buying, I'm not on the hook for some money that you've borrowed 15 years ago.
Sure.
Right. So I want that sorted. I don't want, I don't want to owe you any money. I don't want my company to owe your company any money whatsoever. So I want all those loans sorted out. Yeah, convert them all to equity. That's great. Everyone gets diluted a little bit, but that's fine. No one's going to argue with that, because we're buying the lot. Well, we're buying your shares first, but we're taking it. We're buying control. So this is sort of legal niceties that are only concerning because Southend fans are just there's no trust.
There's just nervousness every time he does anything. Every time there's a slight announcement, it's like, oh, is there a sort of ulterior motive and all that sort of stuff.
And the sort of the legal steps will all be in the Articles of Association. There will need to be an EGM, but it's rubber stamping. It should be rubber stamping. Should be.
Okay, good stuff. There's a feeling amongst the fans. Again, I keep using that phrase, don't I? There's a feeling. That I agree with what you said earlier, and I think most fans would agree that the structure of the deal that's been agreed sort of makes everyone whole, if you like, makes everyone happy. The council get what they want. Ron gets what he wants. The consortium get the club, and they get Roots Hall, and there's a bit of money there to develop it. So yeah, it kind of looks great in that sense. However, there's a bitterness, I think, that 25 years of no, let's be honest, it's not been 25 years of pain, has it? There's been some good times in there as well.
Yeah,
it's important to say that, but there have been some really stressful times for a lot of sort of diehard Southend fans, impacts on mental health. And I think there is a potential sort of bitterness there that Ron might be walking away from this having won a very long-term game at the expense of the club and the fans, because really he's kind of getting what he wanted originally. And so I guess, the question really is there's talk of new legislation coming in, looking at ownership of football clubs. Is there anything you think that can be done to protect clubs from this type of owner that's going to be ultimately abusive and only out to kind of make money and to use the club as a vehicle to those ends?
It's really tricky for umpteen reasons. You're right. I mean, we're talking on Tuesday, and the King's speech is today, where hopefully legislation to create a new independent regulator will be announced. There's still a degree of haggling to be done there. The Premier League is still fighting a rearguard action against it, and the actual implementation could be a while yet.
Of course.
Now, is that the silver bullet anyway? There's a good debate to be had around that. Is there a genuine proven market failure? Yeah. I'd be out of work if football's regulation worked, patchwork of self-regulation worked. It doesn't, I'm afraid. Yeah. I literally write about clubs in crisis every week. Now, why is it that way? Well, there's lots of reasons. One, Britain likes laissez-faire capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Essex, right? Essex voted for Thatcher.
Yeah.
There's a long history here of we'll let the market decide, right? Regulatory regimes don't always work. They're expensive. And it's really interesting that there is a very lively debate at the moment in football about this independent regulator. Most people, I'd say the vast majority, agree that something has to be done. They're not all sold on the idea that this is the answer, though. And there is a real concern about costs associated with this regulator, particularly as you go down the pyramid, because it is going to require some extra accountancy, and a bit of time, a bit of resource is going to be devoted to this. It's a licensing regime, so there's always some downsides to these things. There's also concern around, are we all going to be regulated in the same way? Is Southend United really going to be regulated in the same way as Manchester United? No. Okay. So is it bespoke or is it flat? And if it's flat, then the bar has to be so low that it's meaningless.
Right.
So there's concerns around that. One thing that most people, again, want the regulator to do is the owners and directors test. So you take that away from the EFL and the Premier League and the FA for non-league. And people are like, yeah, that sounds good. But then you speak to owners, current owners, and they don't want the bar too high. Why? Because that's an obstacle to getting out.
Right.
They want, I see this all the time. The self-interest is, to understand why football is the way it is, self-interest. And clubs' views change from season to season, depending on where they are in the pyramid.
Yeah.
I can give some examples there. I probably shouldn't, so the position on the regulator is really interesting. I can think of a couple of clubs right now that have changed their position because they're no longer in the division they were before.
Yeah.
So they just see things differently now.
Yeah. It's very short-termist though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sort of creating this sort of barrier to entry, to making it too hard, is something that really worries all existing investors in football. And then the other thing I often hear is, it's dreadful, isn't it? It's awful, the people we let in, and we don't do enough checks. And why does no one really vet their money on the way in, and source and sufficiency of funds and blah, blah, blah. It's terrible. It's terrible. Oh, not us. We're absolutely fine. It's that lot over there.
Yeah.
No, we're fine.
Yeah.
I worry about that lot.
Yeah.
You're like, hold on a minute. It was only 3-4 years ago I was writing about your club.
Yeah, and it's kind of got to be in the interests of football. Football, as opposed to, but the problem is you've got to get all of these people on side to get this stuff.
So where I've got to is, right, we've heard you lot for enough time now. We have enough data. It's not working. We're going to try something else now. All right. Because what tends to happen is club lurches into crisis. You have a year of uncertainty with all the things you just discussed and you mentioned in your question, staff unpaid, the fabric of the place falling apart, local suppliers unpaid, often a big chunk of tax not paid, stress, just the lot. It's not working. No one wants that. So we're going to intervene. And okay, let's have a conversation then about the level of intervention. And I think let's get it going. Let's get it up and running, and it becoming, I feel like, a sort of living document. We'll get there. So just moaning about this thing that it might never be is pointless, right? So let's get it going. So, and I think that's where the majority of the industry is. And I think that's hopefully where we'll get to in the next, I don't know, 6 to 18 months. Now, is it though going to prevent bad things happening? No, it's not.
The next
right?
Ron Martin, is it going to prevent the next Ron Martin? No.
There's still shit dumped into our rivers. Banks still fail. Pension, airlines still crash. Not crash. Sorry, the tourist industry. There's the regulation does not solve everything. It's not the most amazing insurance scheme in the world. It can make things better if it's done well and properly resourced and everyone buys into it. And then I think, look, whilst I'm certainly no cheerleader for Ron, the Ron Martin story is quite typical. I think he bought in 25 years ago as the guy that was going to flip, right? He was pure property play. He had no attachment to the club, the area, didn't really understand football. And I think, like a lot of people, and I meet these people all the time, they get caught up in it. They think they're the smartest people in the room. They love it. They enjoy it. It gives them a buzz. It's exciting. If you can't play football, running a football team is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, everyone has different reasons for doing it, but they get it. And I think he got into it. I think he did. Lots of people have told me that people forget this. I think it was either when we were in the Championship or League One, he got elected onto the Football League board. So his peers put him there.
Yeah.
He used to attend all the meetings. For a long, long time, Ron was sort of a lovable rogue within the industry.
Yeah.
I'd ask other clubs what they think of, if they knew that I supported Southend. Oh yeah, how's Ron? What's going on with the club? And he's all right. He's all right. Yeah. And he's a bit. And I go, really? Oh God, he's a right pain, and we want rid. Oh, he's not. His heart's in the right place. The number of times I was told his heart is in the right place.
It's funny you should say that. Paul, my colleague on the podcast, he works for Show Races and the Red Card, and he was doing an event up at Charlton 3 weeks ago, the same day that Carnu scored his hat trick. 4 goals. And obviously he was talking about Carnu, and he met the chairman, and the chairman said, "I can't believe how your fans are treating Ron. He's such a great guy.
Well,
I've worked with him loads, and that's so that opinion still sort of exists.
So, and then, like I said, they're loss-making businesses. You can get distracted by other stuff going on in your life, in your business. Relegations, you can back the wrong manager. These are old stories. COVID hit everybody hard. It hit, there isn't a happy story out there in terms of how they got through the pandemic. They're all like, oh my God, it was touch and go. So although there are caveats, however, Ron's running of our club for the last 5 to 10 years has been dreadful by his own sort of metrics. He's failed.
Yeah,
he's repeatedly failed, and he's cynically failed. And by that last point, I mean, lots of other clubs have played fast and loose with the rules at times. They've delayed payments. Ron has done it so cynically, particularly with HMRC, that it's embarrassing. And it's interesting that you found a guy that still vouches for him a little bit, because I don't find those anymore.
Right.
I certainly did a few years ago.
Yeah.
Even within the EFL HQ.
Yeah.
What I get now is, he should have gone. Why is he hanging on there? Matt, explain it to me. What's going on? Why didn't he sell up ages ago? Those are the people that used to be sympathetic to, your club's embarrassing. It's just constantly late, always problems. I hear it in terms of like loan players, lots of little annoyances, moaning.
It's almost
he's
neglect,
burnt relationships.
Really?
He's burnt relationships.
Yeah, he's kind of. It seems that he just sort of gave up. If looking at it from my perspective, sort of almost like washed his hands of it and said and carried on trying to, make the club a going concern, if you like, but without any effort or any.
I think he was trying. I think he's become deluded and isolated. There weren't enough good people around him. He ran the club on its own for a long time until Tom Lawrence got in there. That was the worrying time where there were no counterbalances to him, and things lurched really quickly from normal lower division. This is difficult to, oh my God, what this is a car crash. This is dreadful.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of years, it's almost been too late. It's just literally been crisis management every day. Yeah. And this guy has been not rich enough, not energetic enough, not clever enough to sort it. Yeah. And we have just drifted.
Yeah. Penultimate question from me. The media and the media's kind of role in all of this. Again, I'm trying to sort of be put questions from the fans really, and sort of get that general feeling that the fans have, and try and understand it. And yourself as a journalist covering clubs in crisis, essentially, there's a feeling amongst the Southend fans that certainly the national media are very late to kind of come to these stories. Really, it was only just before that final winding up order that any coverage in the Nationals landed. But also, I think there's a parallel story here, and you've mentioned Chris Phillips, and he does a brilliant job with limited resources. But is there something there about this sort of the demise of the local press in this country, I think probably around the world as well, that has sort of not necessarily allowed, but made it slightly easier for these things to rumble on and people to not be held to account? And just where do you see the media in all of this, and what part does it have to play?
Yeah, again, it's a complicated picture. There's lots of bits to pick on there. So in terms of the national media, you're right. There are sort of, I think, two broad reasons as to why the national media is always going to come late to a story like Southend's. No, maybe three. Sort of Spanish Inquisition. I'm going to think of other reasons why. Well, the one is that Southend drifted down the table, right down the pyramid, sort of out of sight, out of mind. Okay, and whilst our story is really important and unique and special to us, if you take a step back, there's actually kind of a few clubs in exactly the same boat. I've mentioned a few of them already, like Scunthorpe, Yeovil. If you're a national sports editor, there are loads of crisis clubs you can do. We're not unique. The National League and the National League North and South are full of former EFL clubs that have fallen on hard times. So there's that. That kind of man bites dog, dog bites man bit. What's the unusual bit? How do I grab people? Former EFL club in the National League. Yeah. Okay.
There's loads of them. Yeah.
Administration. Yeah. We've sort of, yeah. Okay. Winding up orders. Right. Okay. So there's that. And then I think the thing about Southend is we have been in this constant state of crisis for 15, 20 years. So this goes back to me quite personally. So, whilst I work for The Athletic now, we're owned by the New York Times. Our readership is very international, leaning towards North America, to be honest. I don't want to sort of reveal too many trade secrets here, but they care about the Premier League. Yeah. And actually they care about the biggest clubs in the Premier League. If you look at where our beat reporters are focused now, they're focused on big clubs. And they're also focused on Barcelona, Real, PSG. That is where, for international media, that's the focus, right? But even when I was at the Press Association, which is the national, media agency for UK and Ireland, and the BBC, me going to my boss, Southend United are in court again, or in court. We're in court on Wednesday. But Matt, isn't your club always in court? Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So didn't you tell me in the last time that it was like the 17th winding up? Yeah. But this one feels. Oh, all right. Okay. Well, look, tell you what, keep an eye on it. And if you think it's going to get really bad, like it's sort of an Aldershot or like a Bury, we'll get you on, or a Macclesfield, we'll get you on. Definitely write it. But I'll be like, okay, right, fine. Well, honestly, if I'm honest, I don't think we are quite in a Bury situation yet. Yeah. So that's one of the issues. To go to Chris's point, though, Chris is doing an unbelievable job. Unbelievable job Like I say, I have this sort of overview. I get to sort of go in and parachute in and spend a month looking at Scunthorpe, or a month, a couple of weeks looking at Yeovil or Bury, Maxwell, some of the other ones I've mentioned. The work that Chris does on our club is top notch.
Yeah.
Compared to the work I see elsewhere. One of the things I've said to him is, do you get the buy-in from your paper? Why isn't your stuff not on the front page? And I think there's a question there about the nature of Southend United and its relationship with the place. Not getting too deep, where did a lot of the population that live in Southend, that live in the area, come from? What are their first clubs? How important is the football team to the place? Now, you're talking about, I'm in Macclesfield. Yeah. I moved to Macclesfield. Macclesfield went bust a few years ago. Macclesfield is a town of about 50,000 people. I'm from Brentwood. Brentwood is a town of 70,000 people. Yeah. How important is Macclesfield Town, FC, no longer, to Macclesfield? Very, very, very important.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, there's a north-south thing going on here.
Yeah. Proximity to London as well.
Yeah.
Most people are West Ham fans, aren't they? In Southend, really.
Arsenal,
being honest.
Arsenal, Spurs, West Ham. Yeah. Now, Bury. How important was Bury? Bury changed the election. People like MPs had to get involved. Scunthorpe. What else? Without being rude to Scunthorpe, Scunthorpe just this week has just found out that the blast furnace is being turned off. The reason that sort of Scunthorpe is a place, apart from the football team, they might lose it. So when they thought they were going to lose their football team, my God. Now, Southend fans got there eventually, but did it get the buy-in from the city?
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Belatedly.
Yeah.
And I think that a reflection of that is where Chris's stuff appears in his paper.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he got the front page a few weeks back. Go now, Ron. I think the headline was, which was brilliant. But yeah, I think that's kind of my point. Really, is the sort of resources that can be given and the sort of the prominence that can be given to the story.
But the thing is, the people that run that paper will know their business better than you and I.
Yeah,
Chris's stuff is going in the paper where it goes in the paper or the website for a reason.
Yeah.
So this is where I think, Southend fans, sometimes you need to sort of go, how important is our club to our city? Yeah. And there's an answer. You're being told.
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
Yeah.
Well, I think in the last year, Southend United fans have done something amazing about it. They've absolutely reminded everybody we might lose our football team.
Yeah.
And big places without football teams look daft. They're a bit, you're missing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. One last question from me. I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out. And, we've talked over the deal, your opinions of it. As a Southend fan and an expert on football finance and crisis clubs, how do you see the next 12 months playing out? Where do you think Southend will be in a year's time?
Oh, look, I think we're going to be under new ownership. I'm confident, happy, encouraged about that. It's almost to the point where anything is better than Ron. I mean, look, I don't literally mean that, but I genuinely think these guys are going to be better than Ron. I think they're going to find it interesting and difficult and challenging. But I like the different expertise in the group. I think they might have to bring some more people in as we get further down the road, particularly around the stadium. They need more money, more expertise. All fine, all good. I think the 10-point penalty, where we're going to be, such a hard division to get out of. I think we're likely still to be in the National League next year.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think this time next year, we're more in a position that Chesterfield or Barnet or someone like that is in, right? Genuinely going for automatic.
Yeah.
The other thing to say is, I'm not quite sure how soon, but there is a very, very real live conversation about 3 up, 3 down, which will help us.
Yeah.
So that's good. I think this is the beginning of something much, much better.
Yeah.
Right. We're close, and we can be a sustainable, sensible, well-run football club again. And because of our size and our history, we will then, once we run competently, always be among the favourites to get out of the National League.
Yeah.
Because we are, Chesterfield fans might have an argument about this, Oldham fans might have an argument about this. I think we're the biggest club in the National League.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And
our footprint is fantastic where we are in terms of talent.
Mm.
You know, Essex, that proximity to London, whilst it can be a problem in terms of persuading people to support us, if their fathers and etc. didn't do it, and how close better football is. My God, we have some amazing talent on our doorstep. So, you know, the southeast of England, Essex is a talent hotspot. So we should be able, and just through all the nonsense, we've continued to produce footballers.
Yeah. Well, the play. I mean, I'm like I said earlier, I'm a Derby fan, and I've started going to Southend, and the football they play.
We're playing nicer football than Paul Warren at Derby.
Oh yeah, 100%. The football is brilliant. The possession based, you know, 1 touch, 2 touch. Some of the talent in the team, I think, you know, these guys could be playing at least a couple of divisions above.
And it's one of the things I'm most annoyed about, Ron. And like, again, it's a symptom of bad ownership. Our academy has continued to produce players, but because we've been a shambles, we've not been able to keep them, and we've lost them for nothing. Well, a well-run club gets to choose when to let its players go and gets to negotiate from a position of strength. Okay, yeah, you know, bigger club, yeah, you can have the player for 200 grand, but we want a sell-on clause. We're going to dig our heels in there, and we want some upside. And you know, this is where, you know, proper clubs ownership makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that we get that in the not too distant future. Massive thank you, Matt, on behalf of myself and everyone on the podcast, and indeed the listeners. I'm sure they found that really insightful. Thanks very much for your time.
No problem at all.
Cheers.